So good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see my slides. My name's Simon Raw, and welcome to an introduction to the exciting world of domiciliary optometry. Massive thank you to David Gilbert, who you'll hear through the evening. He's from Flame Health and has facilitated all of this for you tonight. And Evergreen PR, who have done all the marketing for this. So this is me. I qualified back in 1999 from UMIST and went into practice with Boots. Boots came along and said, do you want a career break after 3 years? And I said, yes. So I went traveling around the world and went to work in New Zealand at OPSM. And in 2007, the outside clinic came along and said, do you want a domiciliary job? And here I am ever since. I'm also been chairman of the North East Optical Society. I'm currently the treasurer. I was on the Falls training team in Durham in 2002. I was part of the PROVIDE study, which is a college optometrist study on the prevalence of visual impairment in dementia back in 2014. And I'm CPD lead and university lead for my company. Initially, when I was offered a domiciliary role, I was quite skeptical. I thought, that's not really for me. I don't know anything about it. Nothing was taught to me at university about domiciliary. So why would I want to go and do that? And so all I really heard was myths and rumours from people. So yeah, here I am. This is what I do every day. I've been doing it for 15 years now. I've been out seeing patients today. Just got home, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to go back to the high street ever again. So hopefully tonight we can introduce you to what domiciliary involves, get rid of any of those myths and rumours, and show you how this has evolved as a sector going forward. Because it's CPD, we have to do this for the GOC. So we have to understand how modern optometry and domiciliary is conducted. That's the first learning objective. To understand the legal aspects and NHS requirements for domiciliary optometry. To learn about mobile technology, how we do a domiciliary eye test, the equipment involved, including the fundus cameras, the portable slit lamps, panoptics, the ophthalmoscopes, which are making all our life easier on and lining it to the high street. And then hopefully to improve communication skills, how you speak to a patient with dementia, stroke, aphasia and deafness. And your learning domains tonight are clinical practice and communication. So webinar, the GO making sure that everyone who is down to attends for the full hour. So there's going to be various polls that we're required to do in the chat box at the bottom. And the first poll for tonight is, in a few words, what does domiciliary optometry mean to you? So if you could open the first poll, please, David. And let me know when we have some answers in there. But you need to put an answer in the chat to confirm your attendance, to confirm you're still there.
If they can answer in the chat, then that would be suffice. Thank you.
Pop a message in the chat. So you should have a box on there, and if you go into the chat section, just pop your ideas of what, in a few words, domiciliary optometry means to you. Is that working, David? Have we got people? Because I can't see the chat again, because I've got my screen full with lecture notes.
Yeah, we're getting plenty of content coming through, so I'll just give you
a quick content coming through. That's excellent. Well done, guys. That's brilliant.
So we've got eye care accessible to everyone, at-home eye test, visiting patients, variety, rewarding, home testing, those with mobility or other issues have a chance to receive essential eye care, patients unable to visit high street, bringing eye care to the public, seeing people that are not able, mobile testing, eye care for people who are unable to visit high street opticians, accessibility and equality, allowing less able patients to have the same optometry experience and opportunities, making eye care available to those who can't come into the practice, and visiting people in their home. So yeah, great content.
Excellent. You guys know already. This is going to be very easy to do. So yes. So what is domiciliary optometry? Well, is an adjective concerned with or occurring in someone's home. But obviously optometry can be in the patient's home. It could be in a care home. There is obviously corporate eye care as well, where you go to someone's place of work and work in a factory. I've done a couple of days of corporate work, and obviously the prison eye testing service as well, where it's not done on the high street. My role is 99% going to a patient's own home. So I've been to different patients today and seeing them all at home, and patients with a variety of different needs. I do some care homes and nursing homes as well, but my role is majority in their own homes. But I've got colleagues where it's the other way around, who spend most of their time working in care homes, dementia homes, and things like that. So why do we need more domiciliary optoms? Well, obviously the baby booming generation, they're all moving into their 60s, 70s and 80s now, and there's lots and lots of patients out there who need a home visit. The population is aging. There's more health problems, physically and mentally, out there in the world. And then COVID came along, and we were fully booked before COVID came along, and all the people who were of that generation, but they were going out and doing a weekly shop, or they went to Aquafit, or they went and played bowls, or did a dance group, or something like that, that kept them active, kept them mobile, and was keeping that arthritis at bay. When COVID came along, and all the headlines in the paper said that COVID kills 70-year-olds, stay at home, don't go out, a lot of them took it very literally, and it's really affected their mobility now. And with everything shut down, they stopped doing the bit they gave them exercise. And lots of people's mobility has gone right downhill. So we're seeing a highly increased patient database. Back in numbers, 2019, 2020, there was 467,427 NHS home visits. That's going to massively increase with COVID. So the next figures that come out are going to be much more than that. And then now, everyone working. We're starting to get people phoning up saying, actually, I'm fully fit and able. I don't really want to go into town. Can you come out to my house and test my eyes? Well, it means less time out of work. So we're getting a few more of those coming through as well, which is interesting. As we said before, it's not just in their own home. There is obviously nursing homes in their place of work and prison eye testing. So part of the requirements tonight is to learn who's eligible, who qualifies for an NHS home visit. And first of all, they must qualify for a GOS site test as described on the GOS1 or the GOS6 form as used to be, before we all went electronic, the pink form. To access an optical practice without assistance. And that can be due to a physical disability, such as arthritis. We see a lot of arthritis and osteoporosis, MS, paralysis, amputees. It could be because of cognitive impairment, such as dementia. I see a lot of dementia patients. Respiratory conditions, lots of people with COPD, asthma, lung cancer, that stop them getting out. And then other health conditions, heart conditions, gout, diabetic nephritis, they can't feel their feet, they've had a stroke. But putting down age, guilty, or COVID shielding is not currently reasons for an NHS home visit. So I see a lot of patients, and I ask them why the reason they can't get out to the opticians, and they say, oh, because I'm 102. And I say, well, actually, that doesn't qualify you, because you can be 102 and still get out, and you can be 62 and not get out. So you have to have a reason why. These are a couple of my patients, our lovely patients that we see. These were taken a few months back when everyone was still wearing masks, and those two were happy to wear masks. Still, patients wear masks. I still wear a mask for every patient, and ask the patients if they can wear a mask, but obviously if they've got breathing problems, they can't. So NHS providers, we must have a separate domiciliary additional contract. We have to provide the premises address that we're going to be visiting, and that's for England and Wales. And we have to give them 3 weeks notice if we're seeing 3 or more patients still. So in care homes, if we're going to see a lot of patients, we have to give them 3 weeks notice, which is still quite crazy. If it's just 1 or 2 patients, so most of my patients are either on their own or it's a husband and wife, and we only have to give 48 hours notice, but we still have to give that notice. But if there is an emergency, if we have to go and see someone straight away, if they ring us up and tell us that they need to be seen straight away, you can do emergency appointment express notification service. All our staff have to have enhanced DBS checks. And obviously, as we said before, the patient has to be eligible and due for an NHS eye test and unable to access an optical practice without assistance. Then you must record the reason for the home visit on your records. So now we have another poll to make sure that you're all awake. So what equipment do domiciliary optoms carry? This is poll number 2. Do they carry A, a trial frame, B, portable slit lamp, C, portable fundus camera, D, a fissimeter, or E, all of the above? So I'll let you pop that in the chat. Just pop your answer A, B, C, D, or E in the chat. And hopefully, David, those chat responses are coming through.
All coming through fine, yeah.
Answer in the chat to make sure you get your point. So the answer is we try and perform a home visit by having the best portable equipment. We have electronic records, as you can see here. We have tablet computers, so we designed our own system, so it's all on one system. We have portable slit lamps, which are really good for patients with dry eye, blepharitis, anterior segment disease. I use a panoptic more than an ophthalmoscope, but I have colleagues that use an ophthalmoscope more than a panoptic. We have portable fissimeters for measuring their glasses, electronic test charts with lots of different options on there, which we'll go through in a video in a minute. Eye care tonometer, a lot of you mentioned that in the initial question, and obviously retinoscope, lenses, and trial frame. So now we show a video, which is one of my colleagues who will be talking you through some of the equipment that we carry on a domiciliary visit. And this is 2 of my colleagues, in fact, on the video.
Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Kieran Mathari.
I'm an optometrist with Outside Clinic.
I'm a super optometrist.
And here we have a selection of the equipment that we take on a typical home visit. So we have our remote controlled portable test chart. This has Logmar and Snellen values on, obviously trial set, trial frames. We have our fissimeter here for neutralising spectacles, good old retina ophthalmoscope, eye care models for intraocular pressure. Another way of viewing the fundus is through our indirect panoptic, Welsh-Allen panoptic. We also have indirect binocular viewing system used with a condensing lens, a Heine Bio here. We have our fundus camera, so really good for explaining to patients their fundus pictures, explaining to relatives. Slit lamp, lots of our patients suffer with dry eye, so this is particularly good for anterior assessment. And then we have our tablet, which connects to the printer for any paperwork, and this helps create our bespoke records. And in a moment, I'll take you through each of these items individually. So here we have our remote controlled test chart, wireless to prevent trip hazards. It's got both Logmar and Snellen equivalents, and remote control, which saves us energy walking backwards and forwards. And obviously, as you can see, we've got multiple images on here that help with the testing of patients, and some larger letters for some low vision patients.
This is our tonometer, which is very easy to use once you get used to it. Patients tend to love it because it doesn't make them jump. And it is a contact tonometer, but there's no need for any drops. It's also handy because some of our patients can't sit up straight, so you can adapt it and use it much easier than something they'd have to lean forward and put their chin on.
Here we have a portable version of a fissimeter that you'd have in High Street. Again, just pop the spectacles in there, there's a neutralising wheel, and you read it off from the side.
It stops us having to call old practices to find out about old prescriptions, and if our patients have mixed up any glasses, it lets us work it out quite quickly.
So we have many methods for fundoscopy. Here are a couple of traditional methods, obviously, direct ophthalmoscope. For me, I will use this with every patient. I find it very useful for macular assessment. Obviously, a lot of the patients that we see will have macular issues. And then for the patients, either we need a non-responsive examination from, or just a little bit of extra help. We have our RET as well. So here we have another method of fundoscopy, our Welsh-Allen panoptic indirect ophthalmoscope. Benefits of this for us, again, lightweight, portable, robust. It creates a longer working distance between patient and practitioner. Often patients feel a little bit more comfortable with that.
And they can be quite useful at visualising the cornea.
So here we have our bespoke breath shield, designed and created by one of our optometrists during the COVID pandemic. Helps keep patient and practitioner safer. Again, quite simple. Clip the handle in at the bottom, push the eyepiece through, and then you're good to go. So here we have another indirect method of fundoscopy, stereoscopic this time. A Heine Bio, clips on, much the same optics as a head mounted, and then used with a condensing lens.
We do have portable slit lamps to use. They're actually quite good at looking at the front of the eye as long as you're stable. And they're useful for looking into patients with dry eyes and linking that to recommendations for drops and so on.
So here we have our digital retinal camera. Again, portable, really easy to use, helps us create a library of year-on-year images for the patient. 5 megapixel, 45-degree field of view with a touchscreen user interface. What's really useful from a professional point of view is we'll often get emailed encrypted images of patients so that we can give a second opinion to people out in the field as part of our professional services support.
Our trial frames are comfortable for patients to use. Some of them find it much easier than a phoropter head. It's something that they're familiar with as well. We can use our trial frames on patients regardless of abnormal head positions or mobility problems.
So here we have our in-house designed bespoke record keeping system. Really easy to use, really intuitive. We wanted to get everything on one screen here, so you can see lots of different boxes all outlined in red, which just means that the boxes are awaiting some information. If I click into a particular box, I can make this specific to me, so I have my own preference buttons. I can either use these or I can pull up an on-screen keyboard for free typing on here. As I enter information, the boxes lose their red border until such time as I've worked through all the record card. It just means that if I need to reorder my test for any reason, I'm not going to forget to do anything. When I've completed this screen, I can move on to the dispensing screen, where it will hold my hand through dispensing and allow me to process paperwork, and EGOS signatures are taken on here as well. Here we have an example of a completed record card using our iris system. So you can see the level of detail that we can capture in a very efficient way. Being tablet based, it means that I can use it like a pen and paper and converse with the patient and any relatives that may be present as well. And when this is completed, I can then connect to a 4G network, send this straight back to head office. So we've got contemporary records and also allows for an efficient aftercare service. Hopefully the video's been useful to explain some of the equipment we'd carry in to a typical domiciliary visit. If you've got any further questions, then please just get in touch.
There we go. So this is a completed record. Obviously record keeping is very important through all forms of optometry. But particularly if you have a patient with memory difficulties who may not remember what you said to them. So families quite often ring up, and if we've got everything written, then it's much easier to explain back to a family member what you've done and why you've done something. So we can draw on it in different colours, and we've got buttons to all the COVID stuff on there, which is really helpful. These are a couple of photographs that I took. This is a patient with ptosis, so a little bit of shadow at the top. But you get quite good fundus images that you can check. So first of all, communication. A lot of our patients are absolutely fine at communicating, no problem at all, but obviously the odd one can't, who's had a stroke, who's very deaf. So we need to be on our best selves to make sure that patient gets a really good eye test, that it's not a reduced eye test because of their communication difficulties. We have to be flexible and tailor the test to the patient. So we might not do everything in the same order that you would do in practice. So, for example, I quite often do RET at the end. I'll do RET at the start. Their pupils will be small. They'll have a bit of cataracts, dilate them, do a subjective, and then do RET at the end. And quite a lot of the students that I talk to are quite surprised that RET is the last test. It's like a double check. Increased medical knowledge, understanding how different medical conditions affect patients. So we see lots of different medical conditions. And understanding how that affects their lifestyle and their eyesight is quite useful as well. And obviously in practice, lots of patients to see, but with us we see about 6 or 7 people a day, so about 1 to 1.5 hours per patient. But obviously that was reduced during COVID. We had ways of reducing that testing time. So how do we communicate with people who have reduced communication skills? Well, first of all, hand gestures during history and symptoms. This was pointed out to me by a student who was watching me test. And without knowing it, I was saying to a patient, do you get any double vision? Do you see, when you look at the television, I was pointing to the television, and you get flashing lights, and I was waving my hands for flashing lights. And when you read a book, and I was opening a book like you do in charades. Now when we're still wearing masks, a lot of our patients struggle to hear us. So actually doing a hand gesture as well as saying the words just means that you can communicate better with the patient. We have communication cards for deaf patients. So if a patient can't hear us at all, we have all the history and symptoms written out on a communication card, which you'll see on the next slide. As well as on one side, it says, do you get any headaches? If they say yes, on the back, you can flip it around. It says, how often do you get them? Where do you get them in your head? And all the further questions on each page. Matching cards. So we have patients who can't speak. If they've had a stroke and can't speak, then they can maybe point to a letter. You can point to a letter on the chart and they can match it, which you'll see on the next slide as well. For patients with learning difficulties, we can do numbers or just single letters, single lines. And we've got pictures as well on the chart, so we can do pictures. So it's a good chart to use because we have all the different options available to us. And even just simple hand gestures. So is it better or worse? Thumbs up or thumbs down? If for either patients who can't speak or patients who can't hear you, you can be saying thumbs up, is that better? Thumbs down, is that worse? And they can do the same back to you. When it comes to printing the prescription off, we leave a report on the prescription for family to understand. So anything that we've done anything about cataracts, anything about the health of their eyes, anything that we've seen gets written down on their prescription form. And then if a family member comes in later, they can look at the prescription, not only see a load of numbers that they might not understand, but explain what's wrong with the health of their eyes, what's wrong with their prescription, what they needed, whether they were dilated or not, and everything like that's written down for them. And obviously providing leaflets, like in practice, we can provide leaflets to the family and to the patient about what's wrong with their eyes. These are some of our communication tools. So on the left, we have some hobbies that they can say they like or dislike. So if they can't speak, they can point to them, go through them one at a time, and they can just press the like or dislike card. Obviously a matching card for the letters on the chart. And then that was our communication tool for deaf patients. That's the first page of it, and it's a flip chart. You can go through for all of it. So how do we perform a home eye test? Well, it's I find it's like complete optometry. So when I was working in practice, I found that I would get a patient through who'd been pre-screened. I would do the refraction. I would check the health of their eyes, maybe give them a recommendation, pass them on to someone else to dispense them. And actually in Domiciliary, we offer them advice on their ocular health and their refraction results like you would in practice. But then we do our own dispensing. So a lot of us do our own dispensing. Not everyone. Some of us work in pairs and have a dispenser with us. But a lot of us do our own dispensing. We talk about lighting. So for example, when I worked in practice, I would be saying to patients, you need to put your reading glasses on to see your paper and read. But what I didn't think is that a patient might be sat in a dark corner of their room with the lighting all in front of them, and then saying that, oh, these glasses aren't very good. This optician gave me rubbish reading glasses, I can't read. But actually, it's just the lighting that's wrong. But actually, we can tell them where their lighting needs to be, show them where their lighting needs to be in their room to their chair. Obviously, talk about diet and lifestyle. We see a lot of patients with AMD and talk about their lifestyle, smoking, and what foods as well. And show them different power magnifiers, and we have electronic magnifiers that we can arrange to be sent out for them as well to be demonstrated. And a big thing is falls prevention. We see a lot of patients who've had falls, and if we go into their house and we see that they've got trip hazards everywhere, wires running loose and stuff, we can talk to them, talk to their family, and say this is going to be a problem in the future. This is going to cause them to fall. Can we change it? So my top tips for home eye testing: consult with the patient's family or carer to get the most accurate information. Not all patients give accurate information, but if you speak to the patient's family as well, either before, after, or during the test, do that quite a lot. know the guidelines well and know the referral criteria, but be prepared to be flexible based on the patient's ocular health conditions. So I see a lot of patients whose other health conditions mean that they cannot get to hospital. They cannot necessarily travel very well. And you have to think, which is more important? Is it more important that their current health conditions are going to keep them out of hospital, or do they definitely have to go to the hospital to keep their eyesight, in which case are you going to pull out all the stops and arrange ambulance transports and various other things to get them to hospital, because it's absolutely essential that they go. So knowing what the criteria are, applying it to each patient, discussing it with each patient, discussing the importance with each patient is really important as well. Obviously, if you get an elderly patient with normal attention glaucoma, you might write to the doctor to let them know you found this, but are you going to send them to the hospital if it's going to cause them more problems? Then you might consider not doing it if the patient agrees. And that's where accurate record keeping come in, because if you're not going to do something that follows the guidelines, you have to make sure you record why you've done it and what the patient's requests are and why they've declined to go to hospital, all recorded on the record card. And it's nice because you get time to listen to your patient. You get time to talk to them while you're setting up the equipment, time to talk to them while you're dismantling the equipment, and because you're there for an hour and a bit, you get to listen to what their needs are and understand them better. So why do people choose domiciliary care? Well, it's rewarding work. Patients are really grateful that you turned up to their house and spent time with them and have done a really. The patients are very shocked at what equipment we can bring. I hear every day, I wasn't expecting you to bring so much equipment. I wasn't expecting it so thorough. This is better than what I had on the high street. And we hear that every day because a lot of patients are expecting a very basic test. But it is challenging. You see a lot of difficult patients, and you have to think on your feet about what each patient, how you're best going to manage that patient, how you're going to test that patient in the first place. And we'll go through a few case records later on that we'll go through some of those challenges that we face. But patients are really grateful that you've gone out, and you get to know your patient better with longer contacts. So, for example, I have a patient who lives about 10 miles away from me, and I play cricket as a hobby when I'm not working. And during the test last year, I must have told him that I played cricket and that what I did, and I opened the batting. And a year later, I went back to see him, and he said, "Come on in, Simon. How was your cricket season? How many runs did you score last season? What did you take any good catches?" And he remembered all of that from the time we spent together, which was great. So they get to know you better, and you get to know them better. There's loads of pathology. Every patient has some form of pathology, pretty much. It's rare to see a 90-year-old with nothing wrong with their eyes at all. It does happen, but not that often. So if you like pathology, it's a really interesting career to take up. And this is the best bit: seeing daylight between each patient. So I worked for Boots, and I remember going into work in the morning in winter. It was dark. I could walk to work in the morning, which was nice, but it was dark in the mornings. Getting there, and I worked in a shopping centre, so Boots was at the back of the shopping centre, and I had to walk through the chemist. The opticians was at the back of the chemist, and then the testing rooms were at the back of the opticians. So daylight was miles away from me. And if you have a busy clinic and you're in there all day, and they come in at lunchtime and say, "We've booked a couple extra ones for your lunch break," then you're stuck in there, and then you come out at night time, and there you are. You haven't seen daylight all day. But the good thing about our job is that you get to drive between each patient, and so you get a bit of daylight between each patient that you see, a chance to recover, a chance to listen to something on the radio or a podcast, and just settle your thoughts and move on. There's certainly less monotony than working in routine practice. If you're a bit bored with the same old, then domiciliary will keep you on your toes. Certainly, there's no 2 days are ever the same, which makes it fun. No weekends, so again, that was great for me for cricket. I could go and play cricket on the weekends. And if you work, obviously, retail hours in a shopping centre, there's late night Thursdays and late night openings and Saturdays and Sundays, which is what I used to do. But now I don't work any weekends at all. And obviously, when I worked at Boots, my dispensing went out the window. I didn't do any dispensing at all. And it's a skill that we were taught at university, but never got to really practice it. But this way I do. And obviously there's research, as I mentioned earlier, I was part of the PROVIDE study, which is testing patients with dementia and comparing that to their dementia scores. And that was a college optometrist research study, which has now led to lots more research going into dementia, which is great. So lots of people around the country doing that. So what I thought we'd do just for the next few minutes is just go through a few case records of things that I might encounter during the day and how I deal with it, which I thought might be useful to you. So for this lady is a 92-year-old female. She lives alone and has carers 4 times a day. She's got severe ankylosing spondylitis, so she has a curved spine, head down position, stooped frame. She's had some falls, so we need to look at that. She's got trouble seeing the TV, wearing bifocals at the moment. Her last optician mentioned cataracts. She's got no family history, and she likes watching the telly. She likes doing puzzles, and she likes reading. So in terms of the points to consider for this patient, first of all, how am I going to talk to this lady? This lady is in a chair. Her head is down, looking towards the floor, and I'm 5'11". If I stand or she sees in my so actually getting onto a level where you can talk to her and look her in the eye is really important. So I carry a little stool that I sit on for a lot of patients, so I can sit face to face with them. And if necessary, with this lady, crouching down onto the floor, so she can see my face, and I can give her a smile and reassure her that everything's going to be okay. And do history and symptoms that way, I think, is quite a good idea. And then you've got to think how you're going to test it, because if you put a chart 3 meters away on a stand on the mantelpiece above the fire, that's going to hurt her neck. It's going to be difficult for her. She's not going to look up. She's not going to be comfortable. So do we think about putting the chart on the floor? Do we put it on a box a foot off the floor? You've got to think of where you're going to put the chart that's going to be best for that patient. And then I don't know how many of you tried doing ophthalmoscopy on a patient with a ankylosing spondylitis, but it's quite difficult if you're looking from the bottom up into their eye. So are you going to think about dilation to make that easier if they're suitable for it? Now, obviously, she mentioned she got cataracts, and is cataract referral the right answer for her? If her vision is vastly reduced, well, if there's nothing else wrong with her eyes, then we're going to refer her for cataracts. But if you can make her vision better another way, her out of hospital, if she's 92, doesn't particularly like traveling, it's uncomfortable for her, have you got another option for this lady? And obviously it depends on the cataracts and what she wants. And then you think of your refraction, and obviously if she has a myopic shift, if she's got a nuclear cataract, then you think, great, I can make her see better for the telly, but then you're going to reduce her power for reading. And if she likes puzzles, and often these patients, if they're bent over, will have a very close working distance. Their working distance may be much shorter than average. So you have to think about your working distance, therefore your reading ad, and do you give her quite a high reading ad so that she can do things at 20 centimeters instead, and how do you manage that? And then you've got to think about a dispense. Is it right to give her bifocals if she's got a head down position? Is that going to making things more difficult? Would separate pairs be better? And then a distance pair, give her something with a low bridge that raises the whole frame up, so that she can look out the top of the frame rather than looking over the frame. And what's best for her falls risk? If she's had 2 falls already, is the reason for that, or is it because of her ankylosing spondylitis? So again, talking to the patient why she had them, what caused them, and finding the best thing for her to do. And then obviously if she's doing her puzzles, she's bent over, she might be casting quite a big shadow onto the puzzles, and that's why she might be struggling to do her puzzles. So do we think about lighting advice, getting a specialist light in from the side so she can see her puzzles better? Or do we think about a magnifier with a light built into it for her puzzles? Is that going to be the answer for her? Again, it depends on what her level of vision is. But again, distinguishing between a 6 and a 9 in a puzzle, a magnifier might just help with that she can have a quick look if it's very small print. So lots of things to consider above and beyond just doing a routine eye test. So this is case record 2. This is another typical patient I might see on a daily basis. There's a 70-year-old male patient, has vascular dementia, and lives with his wife. He's physically able, but he walks with a stick. Previous hobbies were walking, gardening, and golf. It's a very outdoorsy lifestyle, and now likes to sit in his conservatory or sit in the garden and watch his birds. He's wearing varifocals quite happily. He's had no falls, which is great, and he's happy with his current level of vision, which is good. But he does get watery eyes, especially in the summer, and photophobia. And he had his cataracts taken off 7 years ago, which was a success. So again, points to consider for this gentleman. Well, don't assume that dementia means no quality of life. I have loads of dementia patients who have great qualities of life and are very happy. They may not remember certain things that have happened. They may not remember you going to see them, but at the time, they're perfectly able to talk to you. They're perfectly able to communicate with you and can tell you lots of things that happened a long time ago, quite often, but not necessarily what happened last week. Don't assume dementia means poor subjective. So again, one of the things that came out with the PROVIDE study was that actually, if you've got the right equipment and the right training, that you can still do about 96% of an eye test on a dementia patient. If you communicate it correctly, a lot of these people are very good subjective patients because they don't think about it. I have a lot of very difficult patients who all know the typical engineer who the different circles and things. A lot of my dementia patients just tell me exactly what it is and some of the best subjectives that we have. So obviously we're going to check that this guy's prescription hasn't changed. And anterior eye and lids with our slit lamp. We're going to look at it for dry eye, for signs of hay fever. We're going to get him some drops to help that. We're going to give him some an lifestyle and his hobbies rather than just his prescription. So it's all-round dispensing. So this is case record 3. This is the last one, you'll be pleased to hear. So this is a 72-year-old bedbound patient who has a severe stroke. He's diabetic type 2 and takes metformin tablets. He has carers 4 times a day and a very supportive family. He has his TV 2.8 meters away, but is aphasic and can't speak. And then you do an eye test, and this is what you see. Case record 3, this guy has pressures of 18 and 23, which don't rise on dilation, which is good news. His vision is 6/8, 6/10 by matching. So we've got our matching card out, and he's able to say what he can see, and his vision is pretty good. He said he's got no pain in his eyes. So we've got a poll 3 now. What is this? Is it just a branch retinal vein occlusion? Is it a branch retinal vein occlusion with a diabetic hemorrhage? Is it a branch retinal vein occlusion with a glaucomatous disc hemorrhage? Or is it something else? So to make sure you're all still there and that you're still awake, and to get your point, pop A, B, C, or D in the chat. And David, if you can let me know when we have some answers coming through.
Yeah, they're just coming through now. So we have on the answers, we have C, A, C, 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 C seems to be the majority. A couple of B's.
The majority, yeah. Okay.
A couple of B's in there.
Yeah.
2 A's.
Yeah.
C, C, yeah. So mainly C.
Mainly C. Okay. So yeah. So it is a bit of a strange, wasn't it? Because obviously, if you look down at the bottom, it's definitely got a branch retinal vein occlusion. Okay, and you can see the hemorrhages down at the bottom on there. But that hemorrhage at the disc, I'm not happy with that, and the disc doesn't look great. The pressures are a little bit high. If we go back to the previous slide, the pressures were 18 and 23. I think. Yeah, 18 and 23. That didn't go up on dilation, and his vision is 6/8, 6/10. So he's got a hemorrhage at his disc, but he is diabetic. So is it just that? So a really challenging one. You've got to think about it. And this guy's bedbound. And the other thing it could be is the pressure asymmetric due to rubiosis and secondary glaucoma, because you don't know how long he's had this. Unlikely, but it's a possibility. And what are you going to do about referral? So this guy, if it's just a branch frontal vein occlusion, referring a bedbound patient is maybe not the best thing to do. Maybe there are other alternatives. But if it's a glaucomatous disc hemorrhage, or if it's a diabetic hemorrhage, then that maybe changes things as your referral criteria and how you talk to this patient and how you're going to manage this patient and how you're going to decide what to do with the patient, and how soon you're going to send them. So the different answers in the chat show that it could have been pretty much any of them, but you have to think about what you're going to do with a bedbound patient, but he wants to keep his vision, and obviously he's got good vision in the other eye, so it's a difficult one. You need good communication skills, explain exactly what you found, explain the options, the risks, talk to the patient about how easy it would be to get them to hospital. And if it's just a retinal vein occlusion, effectively, it's going to be a lot of upheaval for them and the hospital, and they're not going to do anything about it, really. But if it's something else, then we need to look into treatments. So as I mentioned earlier, or it was on the video, we had to change everything with COVID, as we all did. And we obviously used PPE like everyone did. And we got our patients still to wear masks if it's possible, because the college guidelines were different for domiciliary than they were for practice-based optometry. The latest update. We used to do history and symptoms over the phone from outside the patient's house. So in the beginning of the pandemic, when we came back after the first lockdown, we would ring the patient from outside, do as much as we could from outside in terms of history and symptoms. We'd bring their family, talk to them out from outside the house. Obviously, hand washing and sanitisation. And as we saw earlier on the video, the breast shield gave us extra peace of mind. So not everyone is right fit for domiciliary. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But generally, ideal candidates should be a people person and have good communication skills. Be clinically proficient, know all your guidelines, but be flexible, adapt to different situations. And the future is exciting. Domiciliary is the biggest growing sector of optometry. It's the fastest growing sector of optometry at the moment. We're finding a lot of people are wanting portfolio careers. A lot of people are wanting to be able to do a few days in practice and a few days domiciliary, or be able to swap between doing a few days domiciliary and a day in hospital. And I think a lot of the students who are qualifying these days are coming out of university thinking that actually it's not just one thing I want to do in my career, that actually I want to do lots of different things. It doesn't have to be a block of high street working, then a block of domiciliary. You can actually do a bit of everything. I think we'll see more portfolio careers. Better equipment. So a few years back, I wouldn't have dreamed of thinking of portable fundus cameras, going back 10, 15 years. But now we use them every day, and they're really good, and they're really, really accurate, and get really good images off them generally. We're looking at portable OCT. There are people trying to make portable OCTs out there. And again, it'll take time to get really good at it, but when it comes along, we'll be trying it. More uses for IP optoms. So again, I think with the change in the ESR and how optometry is being taught, a lot of the courses switching to a 4-year M-Optom course of 5 years in Scotland. Then a lot of people are going to become IP qualified down the line, and there'll be more uses for it. We'll be able to do more with it. What's definitely going to be happening is there's going to be more domiciliary tests. That I can tell you for definite, because there's more and more patients out there ringing us up every day saying they need a domiciliary test, and the number of optoms doing domiciliary is still not enough. So this was the first in our series of the webinars. We have a few more to come. So on the 17th of November, same time, Thursday night, 7 p.m. We've got High Street versus Domiciliary, the key differences. And that's going to be done with a few of my colleagues. Thursday, 24th of November, which is mainly for our internal optoms, there's going to be an OCT for beginners lecture by Topcon. And because, like I say, a lot of us don't use OCT because we're out in the field. Once we get our portable OCT, we will. So we want to be able to interpret it. So that's the next one. And then Thursday, the 15th of December, 7 p.m, dispensing in domiciliary. So we have Liam Kite doing from Anglia Ruskin University doing a dispensing lecture on how to tailor that to domiciliary needs. So there's future webinars coming up with 2 out of 3 with CPD points. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for those as well. So now is the fun bit, is any questions. So if you want to pop a question in the chat, I'm going to leave this. David will hopefully tell me any questions that come up. Are you still there, David?
Yeah, absolutely. If you could stop sharing your screen, hopefully you might see the
open the share tray. There we go. So I should have stopped sharing now. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to put any questions in the chat, guys, we've got 10 or so minutes to take some questions. The first question from Faisal. So what did you do with the bedbound patient with the BRVO?
I end up referring him, talked to the family, talked about what he wanted, and because he really wanted good vision and he didn't want to lose his vision, and we didn't know how long he'd had it for, we agreed to refer him. And I think I ended up emailing the pictures through to the eye casualty for triage, and speaking to an ophthalmologist and seeing how soon they wanted to see him based on all the facts, and doing it that way.
Second question, does the role tend to be more local community or is it nationwide stroke international?
In our role, because obviously there's lots of different providers, my role is generally 50 miles from my home postcode. So I set off in the morning around about 7:45, try and get to the first one. Obviously, if the patient's just down the road, I have days where my first patient is 3 miles away, 2 miles away. I have other days where my patient is 45 miles away. So I set off in my car with all the equipment and try and make sure that I'm there for the first one at 9 o'clock, so we can start the day on time. And then we see our patients throughout the day, seeing about 6 or 7 patients a day, depending on the driving, the amount of time each patient takes, the number of doubles that we get. If we get husband and wife together, that's usually a bit quicker. And then finished and home by about 6:30. It does vary every day. So some days you're home earlier and some days you're home later, because you never know how long each patient is going to take. And that last patient, if it's a really easy one, you might get home a bit earlier. And if it's a really challenging one, you might get home a bit later. So there is that flexibility that you need to have in terms of your working hours. But it should all balance out to be about the same. But I guess it's similar in practice. If your last one cancels, then you get home a bit earlier, and if your last one's a really difficult one, you're there right till the end. So
that answers the next question, was how flexible, and then also then how can we go about training for domiciliary?
So again, it depends on which provider you go with. But when we get optoms in who haven't worked in domiciliary before, we give them a full week's training. Where we take them down to our head office, and they're with a trainer for the full week. They get to learn the equipment, they get the skill. We do online teaching of dementia awareness and all that sort of stuff, so they've got a better knowledge when they go out. And then we have a lot of support for them. Initially, they'll go out with a trainer who will then support them through the day and go through dispensing. Again, when I first started, my dispensing was hopeless because I hadn't done it for years at Boots. So I needed a lot of support with dispensing and lenses and materials and frames and this, that, and the other. But now, having done it for 15 years, I do my own dispensing quite happily without any need for support. So, but there's lots of support in the beginning because it is a different role. We're aware of that. It is a challenging role, and it's things that you may not have done yourself for a while. So there is lots of training out there, and there's always continuous training. So like say we put on road shows, we do things like dementia awareness, we do Parkinson's, neuro things in all the road shows and stuff like that. So there's lots of things. I think in the next road show, David and I are planning a drugs, how systemic drugs can affect the eyes lecture. So that should be quite interesting as well. So yes, lots of training going on.
What's the weirdest thing you've experienced as a domiciliary optometrist?
Oh, well, how many hours have you got? So I think quite soon I might retire and write a book, The Life and Times of the Domiciliary Optometrist, because there are so many great stories. I've met people who've been in D-Day. I've met people who have played a sport for England 60 years ago, 70 years ago. I've had patients. I had one lady who was a lady. She had a title, who lived in a caravan with no electricity and no chair. So she sat on her bed to do the eye test, and we had to do everything without electricity, which was interesting. But yeah, there are so many different stories, and that's why it's so good. Is there are lots of different things that you can go home and tell your family about. You'll never guess what I saw today. But yes, there's great stories to tell, and the patients have got great stories. If you speak to someone in their 90s, they've got backstories that they can tell you about that would knock your socks off. They are amazing.
Do you often have to ring an ambulance in an emergency?
In 15 years, I think I've rung an ambulance once, and that's when a patient was consented for dilation. She had very small pupils, she had cataracts, couldn't see the back of her eyes. A family were there, which was good, and dilated her, and her pressures went up. And her family didn't drive, and this lady was 90 odd, and it's the only time I've induced a closed angle glaucoma. But I'd done the consent, the family had consented, the patient had consented, so they were perfectly aware of the risks, and they said no, yes, he told us it was a risk, and I'm that 1 in 50,000, and off they go. But of course, had to call an ambulance to get her to the hospital because they had no form of transport otherwise.
Do you perform the same examinations for all ages for the physically challenged people?
No, again, we tailor our routines. So if you see like say a patient with learning difficulties, you might change the way you do things. You might try and get all your tests done at once and do the most important test first, and then work down in terms of what you need, because the patient's attention span may not be that great. But most patients, like say most patients with a bit of arthritis that we see, you can do a very routine sight test in a set order that you would do very similar to practice. And then the next patient you might go and see, you change it all round and you can't see anything on ret, and the subjective is awful, and you end up dilating them and re-retting them at the end, and doing it a different way. So you do ophthalmoscopy a different time, do your fundus exam a different time. So you think on your feet of how is it going to work for this patient. And obviously, if you see a younger patient, you don't want to dilate them quite early in the test because it'll affect their accommodation. So you might do all the subjective tests first and then dilate, and then maybe dispense while you're waiting for the dilation to take effect. And in an older patient, or they've had cataract surgery done, you can dilate them fairly early on in the test. And most patients don't have that much of a reaction to dilation. Like I say, they might get a slight drop in vision, but not much. So again, you can do the subjective straight after dilation, and then they're ready to do the fundus examination after you finish subjective. So
fantastic. So last final questions, guys, just because we're conscious of time. So what are some common problems and difficulties you may run into? And second question was, are you provided with the equipment, or do you have to buy it?
We're provided with the equipment. So we provided our optoms with the fundus cameras, the electronic records, the printers, everything like that. Obviously, different optometrists use different equipment. So if you use a certain ophthalmoscope, you bring your own. Same with the RET. So I use Welsh Allen, but some people use Keeler. Some people use Heine. So you would bring your own in that situation. But all the general kit is provided, and we train you on that as well. And what was the other question? Sorry, David, the first question?
That was it. That was fine. And then a couple more, just saying, do keep a stock of dry eye products, eye bags, accessories with you in case if the patient requires any of these.
No, we have them to post out. So we have a brochure with them all in, and we carry a demonstration model, so we can show them what they are. We carry Blephar Clean wipes, so we can show them how to clean their eyes, drops to show them how to insert the drops, and things like that, as a demonstration, but without actually doing it to them. And then anything that gets ordered gets posted out to them directly to the patient.
And last question, sorry, two things. When is the OCT webinar? I missed the page with the future webinars. So we can send that out to you on an email, Seema, that's no problem. And last clinical question, what happens with referral follow-ups, i.e. rejections, or patient hasn't heard from the hospital?
So there's lots of support from head office. So again, I think there was a question that came up. That was the two-part question, wasn't it? There's lots of support where you want to be seeing patients, but you don't want to be sitting on the phone to a hospital. So we have a clinical support team who you can ring up and say, this patient has X, Y, Z. Can you speak to the hospital for me about them? And they will arrange and send any images in and do all the support network at head office without interrupting your day, so you can get on and see your patients that need to be seen. So there's lots of support that way. And again, if you're not sure about something, there's always another optom. Because you're working alone, you might think, what do I do in this situation? Again, because the records can go into head office, that you can show them fundus pictures. You can ring a colleague and say, well, what would you do in this situation? What would be your advice? And there's always that backup that they can give you a second opinion. So there's loads of support out there.
Perfect. Well, that brings to close the questions. So just to let everybody know, the CPD certificates will be sent out via email in the next 5 working days. And on that will also be a list of the future webinars and links to register to those as well, should you be interested. But unless there's anything else that anybody wants to raise, we'll close it there. Thank you for attending. And thank you to Simon for presenting.
And thank you to David at Flame Health and Evergreen PR. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinars.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.